He thought it was just a ceremonial duel. Until the crowd started chanting for blood and brides. The roar of thousands slammed into Ethan Cole like a physical force, vibrating in his bones and rattling his teeth. Alien voices, deep, guttural, rhythmic, rolled across the open-air arena, carrying words he couldn't decipher but understood in his gut. They wanted violence. They wanted a show. Twin suns burned high overhead, their combined glare hammering down on the vast amphitheater carved into the red cliffs of this forsaken world. Dust hung in the air like powdered rust, catching on every beam of harsh light. The stench of sweat, ozone, and something metallic lingered in the heat, thick enough to taste. Ethan stood barefoot on the packed sand at the center of the arena, a thin trickle of sweat sliding down his spine beneath the coarse leather tunic. They'd thrown at him. His hands clenched around a wooden spear that looked like it had come straight from a museum-smooth shaft, dull metal tip. Zero chance of surviving the next 10 minutes. Above him, tier upon tier of alien faces leaned forward from their stone. Benches, thousands of Sarkai warriors and their families, their scaled hides gleaming like polished armor, their slit-pupil eyes blazing with hunger for spectacle. Some wore ornate crests along their skulls, others draped in vibrant silks that fluttered like banners in the dry wind. A living sea of teeth and scales, and every single one of them wanted him dead. Ethan swiped at the sweat, stinging his eyes, and muttered under his breath, "Great job, Cole. Come to trade fuel cells. Wind up starring in the Galactic edition of Gladiator. Hell of a career pivot." The irony burned almost as hot as the sun's. One busted navigation array, one wrong landing zone, and here he was caught. By a species that thought justice meant tossing you into a sandpit with a pointy stick and a prayer. You trespassed on sacred ground, human. The voice of the High Matron still rang in his ears, silken and venomous as she'd pronounced his sentence hours ago. The law is clear. You will fight. You will honor the right of dominion. Right of dominion. He hadn't missed the way the crowd hissed that word like a promise or a curse. He'd expected some ritualized slap fight, maybe a quick beating to appease the locals. Instead, they stripped him of his gear, chained him in a stone cell, and painted his arms with swirling crimson sigils that pulsed faintly under his skin. Now, as the horns blared and the ground shuddered beneath his bare feet, Ethan realized how wrong he'd been. A massive gate at the far end of the arena groaned open, stone grinding against stone. The shadows beyond boiled, then parted, and something stepped through that made Ethan's stomach turn to ice. The alien champion towered nearly 9 feet, its obsidian hide gleaming like oil, muscle ridges coiling under flesh hard as armor. 2 arms, 2 legs, vaguely humanoid but bulkier, heavier, every movement radiating raw power. Its crest of silver spines glittered in the sun like knives. In each clawed hand, it carried an axe plasma-edged, humming with lethal light. The twin blades shimmering like captive lightning. The crowd erupted in a frenzy of sound chants hammering the air, pounding like war drums. Korath! Korath! Ethan's mouth went dry. His grip tightened on the spear until his knuckles blanched. The champion leveled both axes, their edges flaring bright blue, and bellowed a roar that shook dust from the cliffs. Ethan felt it in his chest, a shockwave of sound that made his heart stutter. Somewhere above, a voice boomed in accented English, amplified by alien tech, cutting through the chaos. By blood and blade, by fire and flesh, the victor claims all. The rite begins. The crowd howled, and this time, Ethan understood the word they chanted, over and over, sharp and savage like a blade drawn across stone. Brides! Brides! Ethan blinked. His brain stumbled over the meaning like a tripwire. Brides? What the hell? The champion charged. Twin suns flashed off the arcs of its axis as it thundered across the sand, each footfall cracking the ground. Ethan barely had time to curse before instinct took over. He raised the useless spear and braced for impact and realized, too late, this wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a mating ritual. And if he lived, he wouldn't just win his life. He'd win every female in the goddamn stadium. The alien swung. The air screamed. Ethan moved. Fade to black. Asterisk. The alien hit like a THUNDERCLA. 10 dove sideways as the first plasma axe cleaved. The space where his head had been an instant before, the blade screaming through the dry air and biting deep into the sand with a hiss of vaporized grit. Heat rolled off it in waves. The second axe followed immediately, a blur of blue fire that he barely ducked under. Feeling the electric kiss of energy skim the hairs on his neck, the crowd roared in ecstasy. Thousands of scaled throats ululated, pounding the name of their champion, Korath. As the monstrous alien pivoted with impossible grace for its size, ripping the first axe free in a spray of molten sand and coming for him again. Ethan stumbled back, lungs burning, his spear clutched in. Both hands. The shaft felt like a twig compared to those glowing executioner's blades. He had no armor, no shield, no backup, just a piece of wood and a set of instincts honed by years in combat zones that suddenly felt like playground scuffles by comparison. God damn it, he muttered, circling, eyes locked on the towering brute. As sweat stung his eyes. Next time Cole read the local customs guide. Korath came at him in a blur of muscle and steel, each swing of those axes ripping through the air like a sonic boom. Ethan backpedaled, sand spraying under his bare feet, ducking and weaving, his heart a jackhammer in his chest. The arena became a furnace of noise and heat, the chants rising, rolling over him like a tide. Bleed him. Break him. Then came the slip, his heel caught in a rut. He hit the sand hard, the spear skittering from his grip. The sky spun 2 suns blazing white agony, and then Korath's shadow fell over him like an eclipse. The alien raised both. Axes high, plasma edges flaring like the birth of stars. The killing stroke. Ethan didn't think. He moved. He rolled hard to the side, felt the axes slam down where his torso had been, the impact cracking stone beneath the sand and sending a geyser of molten shards into the air. His hand closed around the shaft of the fallen spear. He came up in a crouch, every muscle screaming, and rammed the blunt end into Korath's knee joint with a grunt of effort. The alien bellowed, a sound like tearing metal, staggering 4. A fraction of a heartbeat. Enough. Ethan surged forward, jamming the spear between the champion's legs, hooking behind its other knee. He threw his weight into it, twisting with every ounce of strength left in his battered frame. Korath toppled. Not far, just enough. The alien crashed to one side, axes biting the sand, kicking up a storm of dust and sparks. Ethan saw his chance. He lunged, ripped one glowing axe from the alien's loosening grip, and felt raw power surge up his arms as the weapon came free. It hummed, alive, heavy as a slab of iron, vibrating with stored fury. Korath roared and swung its other axe in a desperate arc, but Ethan was already inside its guard. He ducked low, teeth gritted, and drove the plasma blade up under its arm. Through the gap in its armor plates, the axe carved deep. Flesh sizzled. The stink of burning meat filled the air. Korath froze, a shudder running through its massive frame. The roar that tore from its throat was a mix of rage and disbelief, echoing against the blood-red cliffs, then choking into silence. Slowly, like a mountain collapsing, the alien fell to its knees, then pitched forward into the sand with a thunderous crash that sent shockwaves up Ethan's legs. For a second, the arena went utterly still. Ethan staggered back, chest heaving, the plasma axe trembling in his blood-slick grip. His ears rang. Sweat and sand plastered his skin. He stared down at the fallen champion, half expecting it to rise again. It didn't. Then the silence shattered. The crowd erupted in a frenzy so loud it felt like the world itself was breaking apart. Scaled fists pounded the air. Weapons clashed against stone in a deafening rhythm. The chant changed not Karath's name anymore, but his. Human, Human, Human. Ethan stared at them, panting, the axe humming like a living thing in his hand. He wanted to laugh or puke. Maybe both. A shadow fell across him. He looked up and froze. From the high dais at the edge of the arena, the High Matron rose, her silhouette regal against the twin suns, her crest adorned with gold and crimson. Her voice cut through the bedlam, amplified by alien tech, rich and resonant. By blood and victory, she proclaimed. The rite is fulfilled. The human has proven his strength. He is now prime mate of the Sarkai. Ethan blinked. What now? But her next words stole the breath from his lungs. All females of breeding rank, the matron declared, belong to him. The gates yawned open. A procession emerged, dozens of Sarkai females, tall and sleek, their scaled, skin shimmering in shades of sapphire and emerald, eyes like molten gold. They moved with predatory grace, hips swaying like serpents, lips curved in knowing smiles, and every single one of them was looking at him. Ethan's heart thudded. His pulse roared in his ears louder than the crowd. Double quotes. Oh, hell no, he whispered. Women kept coming. The crowd screamed. And above it all, the High Matron's voice coiled around him like silk. Prepare the chamber of dominion. The rite of binding begins at moonrise. Ethan's grip tightened on the axe, his stomach turning to stone. He thought he'd won his life. Turns out, he just inherited an empire of wives. Fade out. Asterisk. The heat of the arena still clung to Ethan's skin like a second layer of grime, sweat streaking down his temples as the Sarkai warriors closed in around him. The chanting hadn't stopped. It had only grown louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. Through the stone tiers, as the alien crowd reveled in the spectacle of blood and triumph, he stumbled as two armored giants flanked him, their scaled arms gripping his elbows like iron vices. The plasma axe was wrenched from his fingers, disappearing into the hands of an attendant before Ethan could even think about holding on. Easy, big guy, he muttered under his breath, glaring up at the warrior on his right. The alien's crest of crimson spines didn't twitch. Its golden eyes burned like molten metal as it stared straight ahead, ignoring him completely. The procession moved, dragging him out of the arena and into a corridor carved from black stone that gleamed like polished obsidian under streams of bioluminescent vines. The roar of the crowd faded into a low thrum behind him, replaced by the sound of his own breath and the occasional hiss of the guards. Armor as it flexed with each step, Ethan's mind raced. His muscles still trembled from the fight, adrenaline simmering hot in his blood. He'd survived by instinct, by sheer stubborn will, by the tiny fraction of luck the universe hadn't stripped from him yet. But now the real trouble was only beginning. He couldn't get the matron's words out of his head. All females of breeding rank belonged to him. Belong, Ethan whispered bitterly, flexing against the unyielding grip of the guards. Hell of a word choice. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, a cathedral of alien opulence. Pillars of carved stone twisted like the spines of titans, reaching up to a vaulted ceiling studded with glowing crystals that bathed everything in hues of violet and gold. Silken banners rippled in unseen currents, embroidered with symbols that curled like living things. And the women were waiting. Dozens of them. They stood in 2 rows that stretched toward an elevated dais at the far end of the hall. Their scaled, skin shimmering in shades of sapphire, emerald, and obsidian. Jewelry clung to their slender throats and wrists, gleaming like fragments of fallen stars. Their eyes, those molten gold, predator eyes, followed Ethan as the guards dragged him forward. He felt their gazes slide over him like claws, cold and burning all at once. Not shy, not demure, assessing, measuring. Hunger coiled in the air, thick and sweet as spiced wine. What the hell kind of nightmare harem did I just walk into? At the center of the dais, framed by curtains of fire-red silk, sat the High Matron. She rose as he approached, her towering form draped in cascading robes that shimmered like molten metal. Her crest of spines glittered with gold rings, her eyes burning with something older than hatred and sharper than desire. She raised a hand. The guards halted, forcing Ethan to his knees at the foot of the dais. "Human," she intoned, her voice rich and resonant, curling through the chamber like smoke. "You have slain Korath in the right of dominion. By our oldest law, the right of conquest is yours. You are now prime mate of Clan Verithi." A cheer erupted from the assembled females, low, throaty, pulsing with something primal that made the hairs on Ethan's arms rise. He lifted his head, meeting the matron's gaze with every ounce of defiance he had left. "Yeah, about that," he said, his voice rough but steady. "I didn't sign up for this. I'm not your prime mate, your chosen, or whatever title you're throwing at me. I just wanted to walk out of that arena alive." The matron descended, the steps slowly, her robes whispering like the breath of ghosts. She stopped inches from him, tilting his chin up with a clawed fingertip. Her touch was cool, almost gentle until her grip tightened like a steel trap. "You misunderstand," she said softly, though her voice carried the weight of an empire. "This is no offer, human. It is law. To refuse is to dishonor the right and to invite war upon your people." Ethan's gut clenched. "My people? Lady, I'm not here as an ambassador. I'm just a guy with a busted ship." The matron's lips curved in something that might have been a smile or the promise of teeth. "Your words are irrelevant. The right binds you. Our future binds you." And so, she released his chin and turned to the watching females, her voice rising like a blade unsheathed. "Prepare the chamber of binding. At moonrise, the human will claim what is his." The hall erupted in a hiss of approval. The women moved as one, like a tide of living jewels, circling him with predatory grace. Fingers brushed his shoulders, his arms light, teasing, claiming touches that sent jolts down his spine despite the ice in his veins. He jerked back against the guards, heart pounding. "Whoa, hold on. Can we maybe talk about this?" No one listened. Above the din, the matron's voice sliced through like a blade of silk. "You will rest, you will eat, and when the moons rise, human." Her golden eyes burned into his like twin suns. "You will breed." The words slammed into him like a hammer. His throat went dry. The women pressed closer, their heat and scent a drug he didn't want to breathe, their eyes glittering with hunger older than stars. And then, as they led him toward a door framed in molten light, one voice whispered close to his ear, a voice soft and deadly as a blade's kiss. "U.S. human." Or guy screaming. The door shut behind him. The rite had only begun. Fade out. Asterisk. The door closed behind Ethan, with a whisper like the ceiling of a tomb. He stood frozen for a long beat, his breath harsh in his ears, staring at the chamber beyond. It wasn't a room. It was a dream woven from silk and shadow, a predator's paradise. Disguised in opulence, the chamber of binding stretched out like a vast cocoon of alien sensuality. Walls draped in shimmering fabric glowed softly under bioluminescent vines that hung like molten chains, casting a golden violet haze across the space. Low braziers burned with blue flames, exhaling a musky perfume that wrapped around him. Heavy and intoxicating dot at the center lay a dais, a wide circle, layered with pelts that glimmered like starlight, ringed by cushions of deep crimson and black. It looked less like a bed and more like an altar meant for sacrifices. Or offerings. His offering, apparently. Ethan's pulse hammered as his eyes swept the room. It was empty for now. But the scent in the air, the faint rustle behind the silk screens, told him he wasn't alone. They were here, waiting, watching, his fists clenched until his knuckles ached. "Think, Cole, think," he muttered, pacing the edge of the dais. The heat was oppressive, crawling under his skin, stirring something primal he didn't want to name. He was a soldier once. He'd fought insurgents in the tunnels of Titan Station, pirates in the black gulfs between stars. He'd stared death in the face and spit. But this wasn't combat. This was something far more dangerous, a battlefield of flesh and politics, where surrender wasn't weakness. It was expectation. The whisper came first, curling through the haze like smoke. "Prime mate." He turned sharply. Shadows moved. Figures slid from behind the silk screens, one by one, until the chamber was filled with them sockeye females, their scaled skin glistening like oil-slick jewels under the pulsing light. Dozens of them. They advanced in a slow, circling tide, hips rolling like serpents, golden eyes burning with hunger. Jewels glittered on throats and wrists, catching the glow of the braziers with every predatory step. The sound of their bodies moving silks, brushing, claws clicking softly against stone, was a rhythm that sank its hooks into his bones. Ethan swallowed hard. "You've got to be kidding me." The first reached him, a towering beauty with skin the color of molten bronze, her crest of spines tipped in scarlet. She prowled around him, the air thick with the musky heat of her body. When she spoke, her voice was a purr of smoke and knives. "You killed Korath," she said. "You broke his spine and spilled his blood on sacred sand. That strength, that fury, belongs to us now." Her claws traced the line of his jaw, sending a shiver down his spine before he jerked away, every nerve screaming to bolt. But the others closed in, forming a living wall of scales and silk, their voices overlapping in a hypnotic chorus. "Show us the human who conquered a god. Let us taste your fire. Prove your worth, or bleed like the rest." A chill knifed through the haze of heat. Ethan froze as the truth slammed home. This wasn't pleasure. It wasn't seduction. It was a test, a gauntlet of flesh and fang, where dominance was survival. If he faltered, if he showed weakness, they'd tear him apart long before the moons kissed the horizon. One of them, a slender figure with emerald scales and eyes like liquid gold, slid closer, her movements a song of sin. Her breath brushed. His ear, cool and sharp as glass. "The right," she whispered, "is not for lust. It is for power. Breed with us, and you rule. Fail." Her claws grazed his ribs in a teasing, lethal arc. "And you die as meat." The others hissed approval, a susurration like blades unsheathing. Ethan's gut nodded. The fight in the arena had been simple: kill or be killed. This was politics laced with pheromones and teeth. They didn't just want him to mate. They wanted a king, a warlord, a conqueror strong enough to bind them under his will or drown in their bloodlust trying. His mind raced for a weapon, an edge, anything. Brute force wouldn't save him now. But something else might. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan straightened. His breathing steadied, his pulse finding the old rhythm of command that had carried him through battlefields and blockades. When he spoke, his voice was low, even and laced with iron. Asterisk. "You want strength?" he said, sweeping his gaze across the circle of burning eyes. "You want fire?" He stepped forward, closing the space between him and the scarlet-tipped beauty who touched his jaw. The circle hissed in anticipation. the air crackling as Ethan reached out and caught her wrist, not gently, but not brutally either. Just enough to show control. "Then you play by my rules," he said, his voice a steel blade sliding free of its sheath. "No games, no tricks. I lead or none of you walk out of here breathing." The silence that followed was absolute. A single heartbeat stretched into eternity. Then the female smiled a slow, feral curl of lips that bared teeth sharp as obsidian. "Good?" she purred. "The moons rise soon, human. Show us if your bite matches your roar." The circle tightened, silk fell away. Scales gleamed in the golden firelight. The air became heat and hunger, heavy enough to drown in, and as they closed around him, Ethan realized the truth. This wasn't seduction. This was war. A war he had to win without bullets, or die naked on an altar of silk, fade out. The chamber had barely begun to pulse with the rhythm of the rite when chaos tore through it like a blade. A sharp crack like the snapping of a bone echoed as the shimmering silence shattered. Suddenly, the swaying silk banners whipped violently as hidden mechanisms groaned to life, and the soft glow of the bioluminescent vines flickered wildly. Ethan barely had time to react when a volley of plasma bolts streaked through the air, scattering the assembled females in a flash of panic and fierce cries. "Assassins!" hissed Shura, the war leader whose sapphire scales had gleamed with predatory intent just moments before. Her voice cut through the turmoil like a whip, rallying the consorts to defensive positions. Ethan's instincts surged, soldiers' reflexes, igniting as he dove behind a pillar carved with ancient symbols. The scent of ozone and scorched stone filled his nostrils. Around him, the elegant ceremony had turned into a battleground of blood and silk. Figures cloaked in shadow slipped through. The Chaos Rogue Sarkai warriors, loyal to none but their own hatred for the human interloper. Their blades flashed viciously, and their eyes burned with fury. "Protect the prime mate," Shura ordered, sweeping her gleaming claws in wide arcs that sent attackers staggering. Her fierce battle cry rallied the consorts, who shed their silk robes for armor of scale and steel. Ethan found himself pressed between the deadly dance of alien warriors. The very females who had only moments before encircled him as prey, now moving as lethal allies. The dichotomy was dizzying: enemy, protector, lover, all in one swirling storm of motion and intent. His hands closed around the hilt of a fallen dagger, unfamiliar but wickedly sharp. He slashed at a lunging attacker, the blade slicing through scaled flesh and sending a spray of iridescent blood into the air. Amidst the chaos, a quiet voice broke through his pounding mind, a whisper laden with warmth and purpose. "Ethan," Nissa murmured as she pressed close, her emerald eyes flashing with fierce intelligence. She was the quiet one, the shadow among predators, her beauty sharp and subtle like a hidden blade. "They won't stop until the rite is undone. We need to end this together." Ethan nodded, breath ragged but resolve hardening. Side by side, they fought and moved with deadly grace. Their synergy born not just of necessity, but of something deeper, a bond, forged in fire and blood. After what felt like an eternity of flashing, steel and roaring plasma, the last assassin fell, staggering back into the shadows from which they came. Silence reclaimed the chamber, heavy and charged. Ethan stood amidst the wreckage, sweat and blood mingling on his skin, his eyes locked on Nissa as she reached out and grasped his hand. "There is more you must know," she said quietly, voice trembling with a secret weight. "The rite is not just about power or mating. It is about survival." He blinked, wary but desperate for answers. "Our people," she continued, "are dying. Our bloodline weakens with every generation. The rite was created not only to choose a leader, but to create a new legacy, a hybrid bloodline that can carry the strength of two worlds." Ethan's heart thundered. You mean me? Nissa nodded, eyes shining with fierce hope and fear. You are the key, Ethan. The first human ever to win the right. Our future depends on what you will become. The weight of the revelation crashed over him far greater than any battle scar or alien threat. He was not just a survivor of a deadly ritual. He was the hope for an entire species. And the choice ahead was clear. Embrace his destiny, or doom them all. Asterisk. The grand chamber thrummed with tension as Ethan stood before the towering council of Sarkai elders. Their faces were carved in stone like determination, eyes sharp as blades that dissected every inch of him. The twin suns outside cast a crimson glow through the stained glass windows, bathing the hall in fiery light that mirrored the weight of the moment. He was bloodied and bruised. From the ritual's chaos, his bare chest marked by the ancient sigils tattooed by the matron seers. His muscles ached, but his resolve burned hotter than any pain. This was no longer about survival. It was about leadership, legacy, and the fate of two worlds intertwined. The council elder at the center, an imposing figure with scales dark, obsidian and eyes like molten gold, stepped forward. His voice boomed, echoing through the hall. Ethan Cole, you have shattered our traditions and our expectations. You have won the right of dominion by strength and will, but can you wield the power you have claimed? A murmur rippled through the council chambers, and Ethan felt the weight of their skepticism pressing down. The human species so often dismissed was now the chosen prime mate, destined to sire the next generation of Sarkai warriors and rulers. Before he could answer, Nissa, the quiet consort who had stood by his side through fire and storm, stepped forward. Her voice was clear and unwavering. He has earned his place not only through combat, but through understanding and honor. He fights not for himself, but for the survival of both our peoples. A ripple of approval spread among the council. The elder nodded slowly, acknowledging her words. Then the final challenge arose. A council champion stepped forth, eyes blazing with fury and defiance. The ancient custom demanded that the new leader prove his worth one last time, not only with strength, but with heart. Ethan faced his challenger, muscles coiled like steel springs. Their duel was fierce, a clash of cultures and wills beneath the watchful eyes of 1,000 generations. Steel sang against plasma, every strike a statement of dominance and respect. When the dust settled, Ethan stood victorious. The chamber erupted into cheers, and the council elder raised his claws to the heavens. Let it be known throughout the stars, Ethan Cole is the human king, the unifier of our clans, and the beacon of our future. Nissa approached, placing a gentle hand on his chest. Her eyes shone with pride, and something deeper, a promise. Our child grows within me, a symbol of our bond and hope. Ethan looked down at her, awe and determination intertwining. He had not sought this destiny, but he would embrace it. For in his hands lay the fragile thread that could weave two species into one, or unravel them into chaos. As the twin suns set beyond the alien horizon, Ethan stood tall on the balcony of the council hall. Thousands of voices rose in a chorus of loyalty and hope. The galaxy was watching, and the human who had accidentally won a deadly alien mating ritual was ready to lead them all into a new dawn. Fade out. The end.